Buenas tardes, yo soy Rosalinda Lares. Estamos en la lección 9. We are in chapter 9 in our side-by-side book. All right, in our side-by-side book. Chapter 9, and on my lesson, we are again on the simple present tense. And they're going to use making sentences by talking about nationalities. Where are we from different parts of the world. All right, to use our sentence making this time. All right. We're going to talk about where we are and what are we doing and who are we doing it with. Where we are, what are we doing and who are we doing it with. We're going to be using our pronouns again. Our pronouns. I'm going to turn this around this way so you can see it. All right? Okay. About our pronouns, our singular ones. We're talking about one person. I, of course, when we're talking about ourselves. He, talking about a male, and she, when we're talking about a female. It, when we're talking about an object. Okay, object. Ourselves, a man, and a woman. Those pronouns, singular noun. I'm talking about one person. One person. One person. One person. I don't know if you'll have to zoom in to see it, because he doesn't have the TV on today. Okay, all right. So I will, there you go. All right. Even make this closer. There we go. So the singular noun. All right. Then we have the plural. Are we talking about us, we, more than one, they. All right. Them, plural, more than one, means more than one. All right, okay. And then we have to decide, do we need the verb to be live or lives? Do we need to add an S to the verb to make it be correct? To make it be correct, all right? All right, so it starts off by giving you lots of vocabulary on that first page, all right? The characters on that page, on page 79, are doing a lot of different daily activities, things that we do all the time, all right? It has cook, call, drive, eat, listen to music, paint, play, read, sell, shop, sing, speak, visit, watch TV, and work. All right, those are all things that we do. Those are activities that we do. All right. Excuse me. Okay. So it has a picture clue for that activity. Just if we looked at number 8, he's reading, he needs to read, and the action is reading the newspaper. He's actually reading the newspaper. Number 4, eat. I'm changing it to a vowel. Eating a sandwich, right? Eating a sandwich. So remember, we talked about a verb, anything that we can do, anything that has a move that we actually physically do. All right, actually do is a verb. All right. All right, and then on page 80, they're going to want you to practice orally using the pronouns and asking a question as you use those pronouns. The first one is a statement, though. I live, we live, you live, they live, all right? And then ask a question. Where do I live? Where do we live? Where do you live? And where do they live? And then, what are you doing there? What do I do? What do we do? What do you do? And what do they do? All right. And it asks you to practice introducing yourself. All right. Introducing yourself. What's your name? And then they answer, my name is Antonio. Where do you live? I live in Rome. What language do you speak? I speak Italian. Tell me, what do you do every day? I eat Italian food, I sing Italian songs, and I watch Italian TV shows. So you could pause right at this moment and practice by using your name, practicing with someone else. And I would make it personal. What's your name? My name is Rosalinda Lares. Where do you live? I live in Midland, Texas. What language do you speak? I speak English and Spanish. Tell me, what do you do every day? I work, I go home to my husband, and I like to watch Netflix. So you can make it personal, practicing introducing yourself, telling something about yourself. So I would pause it now and practice with someone in the house, or if you want to practice by yourself, all right? And then they're asking you to pretend you're interviewing someone. So you could do that at home as well. You could pause this after I finish and practice interviewing someone in your house, even if it's someone that you know. Asking them, what's your name? Where do you live? What language do you speak? And what do you do every day? Those are the questions that you would be asking someone you just met. It doesn't have to be as formal, you know, when you greet somebody, hello, of course you extend your hand. My name is Rosalinda Lares. I'm here from Midland, Texas. It's nice to meet you. You might say something about yourself. I'm a teacher. And then you go the conversation back and forth. So it's practicing introducing yourself to someone else. Now they're using nationalities. One person, if you look on page 80, one person is from Madrid, one is from Tokyo, one is from Paris, one is from Berlin, one is from Sequil, one is from Moscow. And of course, you could also use being from Mexico or from whatever nationality you belong to. Or you can make it local, talking about where you live at this moment. What neighborhood you live in, what part of town do you live in, or where would you like to live? Some of us would like to live somewhere else. Some of us have lived in Midland all of our lives. Some of us are new to Midland. So you can practice doing the nationality, or you can practice on a more personal level, more relevant. And if you're listening to my class, you're a person that speaks Spanish and English, even if you're barely learning English. So that's something to be proud of, that you know two languages, all right? So you could practice with someone in your home. You could use the scenarios, or you could make up your own. What is your name? I'm Rosalinda Lares. Where do you live? I live in Midland. What language do you speak? I speak English and Spanish. What do you do every day? I teach at Days of All Elementary. I like to go watch Netflix. I like to spend time with my grandbaby and my husband. All right. So make it personal, make it where you're talking and introducing yourself. All right. You can also talk about your nationality. We can practice the one from France. What is your name? My name is Anne. I live in Paris and I speak French. What do you do every day? I work. I like to look at the sites in Paris. All right. So if you don't know a lot about the city, that's why I was saying you could use living where you live now in Midland. All right. Then on page 81, you have people around the world. Again, it's talking about other nationalities. All right. Okay. And they're practicing again, introducing themselves. All right. Okay. Again, we're talking about the simple present tense of using I, we, you, and they. All right, using our singular pronouns and our plural pronouns, and they're using them. They're practicing them by using conversations and talking about what nationality we are. All right. Usually, they describe a known fact when you're talking about where you live. Okay. The verb is usually very simple. I live, I eat, I love, I sing, I run. There's usually not an ing there. All right, it's a simple verb. The words usually have a question form. It's not a period, you're asking a question, so your voice changes. Where do you live? All right. What language do you speak? Your voice should change just a little bit for that intonation of the question mark. What do you do every day? All right. What are some of the things that you like to do? Your voice should inflect a little bit. All right. So they want you to practice introducing yourself again by your name, where you live, and what language you speak. All right. You could introduce yourself in other ways, depending on where you are at. If you are at a party, you're probably not going to talk about what language you speak. You're probably going to say, my name is, I live right around the corner, or I live on the other side of town. I speak, I enjoy, or I'm glad to be here. You wouldn't necessarily talk about what language you speak. All right. Okay. Then where do you live and what do they do? So it's focusing on who are they talking about? Where are they and what are they doing? The same that we did on the other lessons. And they have a conversations you can practice on page 32. So once again, after I practiced it, you can pause and practice yourself and pretend you are these people. My name is Linda. I live in London. I work in a library. My name is Brian. I live in Boston. I work in a bank. We're Walter and Wendy. We live in Washington, D.C. We work in an office, and you notice that one changed. We're is to say it's a contraction for we are. It's more than one. It means more than one. Okay. My name is Bob. I live in Buffalo. I drive a bus. We're Howard and Henry. We live in Honolulu. We paint houses. Once again, you see that were, where it means more than one. Instead of saying we are, they're saying were. Okay. My name is Tina. I live in Tampa. I drive a taxi. We're Carol and Ray. We live in Cleveland. We cook in a restaurant. And if you go back to the last one on the first row, the middle one in the second row, and then the first one in this last row, you see that it's using, instead of using I across on the first part, before you use I, you must use a name first. All right. My name is Linda, and then you use I. And then we are, when it's more than one, then it changes to we. We live, we cook, we sing, whatever that is. All right. So pay attention. Usually before you use a pronoun, you want to use a proper name before you use a pronoun. And not always, but most of the time, you want to use your name first and then start using the pronoun, right? So again, they have the models again on the bottom of page 82. They want you to practice using those little, and so you can practice those ones with the word bubbles. You can pause it now and use those with the word bubbles, all right? Mr. and Mrs. DiCarlo, all right? That's the story they're reading. You can practice this story by reading this story, all right? All right, so I'm gonna read it. You can see how it sounds fluently, and then you can practice reading it yourself and pausing and reading it yourself. Mr. and Mrs. DiCarlo. Mr. and Mrs. DiCarlo live in an old Italian neighborhood in New York City. They speak a little English, but usually they speak Italian. They read the Italian newspaper. They listen to Italian radio programs. They shop at the Italian grocery store around the corner for their apartment building. And every day they visit their friends and neighbors and talk about life back in the old country. Mr. and Mr. Carlo are upset about their son, Joe. He lives in a small suburb outside the city. He speaks a little Italian, but usually he speaks English. He reads American newspapers. He listens to American radio programs. He shops at big suburban supermarkets and shopping malls. And when he visits his friends and neighbors, he always speaks English. In fact, Joe speaks Italian only when he calls his parents on the telephone or when he visits them every weekend. Mr. and Mrs. DiCarlo are sad because their son speaks so little Italian. They are afraid he's forgetting his language, his culture, and his country. Now, if you're a person, of course, from another country, sometimes we feel that way. A person can feel that way because we kind of submerge ourselves in the new place and we become part of that environment. All right. An example is, a lot of times our Spanish speaking couples sometimes focus on teaching their children English and might forget to teach them Spanish. So we lose a lot of our culture by losing our language. So that's what the story is talking about. I can relate to that. When I was a little girl, my parents were told they needed to speak to me in English or I would never learn English. And my home was a Spanish-speaking home. And I lost a lot of my Spanish because my parents spoke mostly to me in English. So I can relate to that story. So usually when we read, we want to make a connection to the story, or try, not always. Sometimes the story doesn't relate to us, but this time it did to me. I can understand the feelings of the parents. And my parents thought they were doing the best for me, but we have to be proud of being Mexican and American and keeping both of our languages. We need to be proud that we have that advantage, that we know two languages. So then it asks questions, comprehension questions on page 84 about the story. Of course, you would practice reading it for fluency, and then you could stop and once again ask those questions or have someone ask you the questions to comprehend the passage all right? But I'm not going to do that with you, all right? So you can stop and do that. All right. Then you have to decide right in the middle when it says which word is correct, all right? Usually when we have a singular now, then we have the verb with an S. When it's more than one, the S drops. We don't say we reads. We don't say that. We read. So usually if it's a singular pronoun, you're going to use the S at the end of a word. If it's plural, you're usually going to drop the S. You're going to drop the S. So once again, so you're going to say, I read. Okay, and usually you're not going to say I reads. So I is particular. It's particular because it's special because we're talking about ourselves. All right, so you're going to drop that S for the I as well. Okay, okay. So you're not going to, even though it's singular, you're going to drop that S. All right, because I is a little bit different because we're talking about ourselves. All right, okay. And then the plural, we read, we drop, once again, there's no S. But when you say a person, she, or let's say Carla reads, then you have that S at the end of your verb, Carla reads, okay? They read, then you drop the S. All right, okay. He reads. Again, you have that S. Okay. We were reading. Gonna add that ing, that verb there. We are reading. So that changes it. So it depends what pronoun you're using, whether you're gonna have the S, all right, or not, all right. And this one changed a lot. We are reading, okay. Changed it and I put that ing to make the verb, all right. Okay. So I think that a good point to notice in this lesson is when are you going to use the S and when you're not going to use the S. Most of the time with the singular, you're going to drop the S, all right? I mean, I'm going to put the S, but for I is an exception, all right? It's just the way the English language is, there's always an exception. And then mostly with the time with the plural word, you're going to drop the S. You're going to drop the S. And the others are just practicing introducing yourself. Practicing introducing yourself is the lesson on that. All right. You have on the next part, you have where they're still talking about nationalities. All right. Where do you live? What language do you speak? And what do you do every day? All right. Okay. And practicing that back and forth again. All right. So my practice for you, the practice I would recommend for you to do is on page 86. All right. Distinguishing plural and singular pronouns. All right. Which means one person, which one means more than one. And then I would practice. So I would look at these pronouns, and then I would look at deciding, do you need the S or do you need to drop the S? All right. Okay. He drive a truck or he drives a truck. All right. What is the verb going to be? Is it going to need that S on it? All right. Those are the two parts that I would worry about, that I would look at. All right. And practice. All right. So Those are the two main things. All right, we're still talking about using pronouns, singular and plural, and talking about this present tense. It's happening right now. It's happening right now. We're not even focused on the past. So once again, the verbs would have an S or an ing. All right. And I think that's all for the lesson. All right, so I would practice identifying your pronouns, and singular and plural, and deciding, do you need an S or do you need to drop the S when you're combine that pronoun with the verb, okay, with the verb, with the action. All right. Okay, and I think that's it. Okay, if you don't already have a spiral to write in, I encourage you to get one, to get a pencil or a pen, to write in that journal, to practice writing sentences with the concept for each lesson. I would encourage you to do that if you're not already doing that. Learning a language requires you to orally speak it, to listen to it, and to also write it. So I would be doing those things if you're not already doing that. Some of you may already be doing that. And it does suggest having a journal on page 86. And you can practice writing out your conversation that they focused on today. Where do you live? What language do you speak? And what do you do every day? Write a paragraph about it in your journal. So you could write about your experience. You could write about your experience as a person coming from another country. Or you can write about your experience of what it's like to live in Midland. You could write about how do you feel about knowing two different languages? It should be something that you're proud of doing or knowing. How does knowing two languages help you grow as a person? Or how does it help you help other people? We're advantaged at helping people that may not know, but only know one language and have trouble communicating. So that's some things you can reflect on. As learning a language and being learners, we need to reflect on our learning. Okay. That's it for the lesson. Be safe and God bless. And I will see you again for lesson 12. Remember, the focus was pronouns, singular and plural. You can practice talking about where you live, your nationality, and also practicing do you need an S or do you need to drop the S for the action? All right, okay. And have a good evening or good afternoon or good morning whenever you're watching. And I will see you for lesson number 12. Thank you.